Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian the Rain Man Lucas. Welcome to RAINMAN'S Take, observations on the world we live in. We're going to take a deeper dive into topics of interest to me, including politics, current events, history, popular culture, and social issues. You'll find the diversity of topics refreshing. In our clickbait, soundbite society, we rarely get the whole story. RAINMAN'S Take interviews interesting people as well as peeling back the onion on specific topics, all with the goal of getting people to think more deeply about a subject. Hey everybody, my guest today is the creator of Money Flow, Nicole Lombardo. Nicole, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Well, we're going to have a great conversation today. Before we get going, I'm just going to ask you to kind of tell us a little bit about Money Flow, how you got started with it, how that all came about, but just a little bit of groundwork for everybody out there. Nicole and I are very good friends, so if I start calling her Nikki, that's just because we're good friends, and that's how when we interact together, that's what I call her. So, with that being said, Nicole, how about you just give us some background about yourself, and then how you got into Money Flow.
Yeah. So the Money Flow really came together because of friendships like you and I have. You know, those friendships where you feel very comfortable sitting at a dinner table and discussing things in the world and life and money. And so you and I have connected around real estate and lots of different topics financially, right? And so the Money Flow came because I've been blessed with mentors and friends that can sit around a dinner table and talk about finance and money. And that's not comfortable for everyone. And so when I really started to look at what was missing, I was a business coach before a finance coach, a money coach. And one thing that was missing is that women in particular that I was working with, they felt very shameful around money and they didn't want to talk about it. And well, if you're building a business, you have to address money and finances. So it became very apparent very quickly that we needed to dive into the money side, the finance side, healing that relationship and feeling comfortable with it. And, you know, money has been something I've been interested in since I was young. I was always asking my mom questions and she's, shut me down quite often, it's like, why are you asking such personal questions, but as, the twists and turns of life would have it, I ended up working in the mortgage industry at 19 and I still work with the same broker all these years later, 20 plus years later. And, that helped me dive into really understanding where people are at, especially Americans with the credit and just, living paycheck to paycheck. And so, working in the mortgage industry and seeing what people are actually dealing with, and then also working with entrepreneurs and seeing what they were dealing with, I kind of just took all of it and compiled the Money Flow Co.
Very cool. And we'll definitely talk more about the Money Flow, but you mentioned a couple things in there that I definitely want to hit on. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about my upbringing and how I grew up. But you mentioned something about, constantly asking your mom about money when you were younger. Is that something was your mother, was she actively trying to help you learn about money, or is that just something that you sort of had an interest in and maybe she never necessarily didn't want to talk about it to you? What was that like?
I was very curious. I wanted to know about everything. So I would ask my dad, how does a camera work? And he would tell me every little function. How does an engine work? He'd tell me every little thing. Right. And I randomly asked my mom one day, like, what does a mortgage look like? Like, how much do you pay for a mortgage and how does that work? And she just was like, absolutely not. We are not discussing this. How dare you ask a personal question like that? And she shut it down. And ironically, a couple of years later, I started working in the mortgage industry.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating because I think that's one of the big, like, for instance, when I was growing up, I was the middle of 5 siblings, solidly middle-class family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked. And I honestly, and it could have very well been me, I was so clueless back then, it never occurred to me to even wonder about money, right? You had your little checking account that you walked up to the bank and you deposited a couple bucks or whatever. But this I think is one of the things that's so great about what you're doing, is because a lot of people don't grow up understanding money and finance and credit and all those things. And it's almost like that should be taught in school, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that tide is turning a little bit. I did hear, we're based in San Diego, and there is a school in Chula Vista that is teaching this in the high school.
Really?
The very basics of mortgage and credit cards. And yeah. And so I was really excited to hear about that program, and I hope that that rolls out to more schools.
Absolutely.
It's so critical for people not only to have the conversations, but to know the actual numbers and how to look at bank accounts. Back in the day, my mom used to balance a checkbook, and we don't do those practices anymore. Everything's online, and I think that has even detached us even further from actually looking at what's going on.
Right.
And so I'm so happy that they're starting to teach kids who are very tech savvy and digital based to really dive into their numbers and look at them. So I'm hoping that rolls out even broader.
That's actually great to hear, because the double-edged sword of living in America is it's a consumer driven economy, right? So everything is geared towards spend. And if you don't know what you're doing, you get yourself in trouble in a hurry, So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, along those lines, I'd say that if I were to average out the average amount of debt for my clients, it's about 80,000.
Really?
Yeah. And we're talking between the ages of 20, 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's a fascinating subject that everybody deals with on a daily basis, and not many people know much about it. So this is why money flow is such a cool concept. And why in particular, are all of your clients women, or do you have men as well? And if they are all women, did you feel that there was definitely a need to have women focus more on this?
Yes, I found that as I started working, first and foremost, I was working as a business coach. So when the mortgage industry kind of died out after 2008, I took a little hiatus from that and started coaching women, building businesses. And yeah, I do work with a small percentage of men. Happy to work with anyone, but mostly a lot of women are attracted to me because I talk about healing a relationship with money. I talk about guilt and shame and fear, which a lot of women deal with. I find that men, for whatever reason, they can dive into the numbers. They detach themselves from the emotional side of things, and they just kind of get to work and get in there and do it, for the most part. And that's a generalization, but from my experience, where women, they really have a mindset thing. And I think that, as a society, as a culture, we have, women are kind of, if you speak out, you're kind of bitchy type thing, And so I think that women have just they don't feel comfortable discussing it. And so that tide is shifting, and that's what my community is about, is like building a community of women who can share with one another and learn to speak about it. But I think overall we've grown up just not really wanting to talk about it, kind of hush hush. And then that guilt. I just was teaching a group last week, and every single woman in there said, I want to have freedom with money. I want to be able to do good things in the world, but I'm not materialistic. And they all had to excuse themselves, give an excuse for it. And it's like, no, just say you want money so you can give back or donate or do big things. And I don't hear men really do that. They never bring in that, like, oh, but I'm not materialistic. I don't need a bunch of stuff or a big house. They don't go there. And so it's actually a really interesting topic I would like to delve in further.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say that, you're talking about what's the difference with the XY chromosome? Why
Yeah,
does one fit with,
exactly.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And most of the women that you have as clients, what are their backgrounds? Are very similar to most of us, where their parents didn't necessarily talk about it, or where are some of these sort of those negative emotions coming from as far as their money aspect is concerned? Is that just because society, or is it more just an individual kind of feeling about that?
I think that it wasn't talked about, but they also saw that for a 20, 30-year-old age range, they saw their parents really spending a lot of money. Whereas if you're in the older generations, they didn't spend as much, right? They saved
Yeah,
and paid with cash.
yeah,
And so I find with the 20, 30-year-old, early 40s, it's a different subset of healing with their inner child and all of that, the childhood stuff, versus the older people. It's really interesting, because credit was so widely accessed starting in the 80s, 90s. It just became more and more readily available early 2000s. So
right.
it's a little bit different for everyone, but overall it's not talking about it, but it's also seeing like, yeah, money just comes and goes, and so they don't need to discuss it because there's no checks and balances there.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to imagine that you get who are now grown-ups, but were kind of uh, spoiled a little bit when they were younger, based on their parents buying everything, and there was probably 3 or 4 cars, and so they immediately get a car when they're of age. I'm sure their relationship with money is a lot different than somebody that grew up without it. So that's fascinating. So how is money flow set up, and kind of what do you do with your clients?
So I kind of break it down into 3 parts. There's kind of, are you in the dark? You're afraid to look at bank statements, have no idea how much you owe. You're afraid to look at it or deal with it and all of that. And then there's the next step of just getting very clear, looking at everything, knowing what your debts are, knowing what is in your checking, your savings, what your expenses look like. Do you want to build a budget? And then there's the third part of, once all that's cleaned up and you're very aware and you're paid off your debt and you're saving, then it's the investing and that, giving back and investing in wealth generating investments like real estate or stocks or, whatever. And so I kind of look at it in 3 parts. And so if someone comes to me and they're already looking at their finances, then great, we just clean them up and give, stronger strategies to pay off debt quicker, work on any mindset issues, and then get them towards that real estate or, stocks or whatever it is. But yeah, some people are in that dark place where they're just so scared and they don't want to look at anything. And so if I can get them to just forego guilt and fear, forego that a budget's a bad thing, work with them on healing some of their their past with money. And then I have money dates that you make a date with yourself on the calendar. You sit down, you look at all your income, your expenses, what's in your checking account, where are you at with paying off debt. Just a very simple outline, and that just helps them step by step just to go move through that journey towards something different.
And look, that person that's on the super beginner, super afraid end of the spectrum, like how long does it take them through your process to kind of get to the point where they're doing those money dates for themselves and actually, is it a long process? I mean, does it take 1 or 2 sessions with you? What's the timeline for something like that, for a really novice is not the right word, but for somebody who's on that far end of the spectrum? How long does it take for them to kind of work their way into it?
By the time they get to me, they're ready.
Yeah.
They wouldn't reach out if they weren't ready. And I've had people say it took me a year to reach out, but now I'm ready. And so within, a session or two, they're on their way, because I have them go away, do homework, come back, and we set in like a really good protocol for them just to kind of ease their way into it. And then I have people come back kind of, every few months or so until they get on the track. And that's why this is a mentorship. It's not coaching, it's not like, let's get you into this program and let's, shift all these things, because it takes a while. It takes a while for you to get the income in to pay off the debts, all of that. And so for me, I've had mentors in my life for 20 plus years, and I still go to them when I need help and to pencil out numbers and bounce ideas off of. And so that's what I'm trying to really create with my clients, is a long-term relationship, a mentorship. As they grow, they come back and we continue the work together.
That's awesome. And forgive me, I should have asked this earlier in pre-production, but how do people get a hold of you? What's your website? Is that the best way to reach out to you? Is your website, or what's the best way to get a hold of Money Flow?
Yeah, so it's Nicole-Lombardo.com, and they can contact me there.
Okay, very cool. Money Flow, Nicole-Lombardo.com. I love it. I had something that I was going to ask you, and that was, how are most of your appointments with your clients? Is it over the phone? Is it in person? You mentioned homework assignments, so it's pretty interactive, right? You go through it with them, and so kind of walk me through one of your sessions.
Yeah. So if we're doing there's two sides. So if whether they're here at the house or we're, through Zoom or Skype or whatever, I have them fill out an intake form before they work with me. And I get a feel for whether they need to dive right into the numbers or if we need to do mindset work first. And so if it's mindset work, then I use a process called RTT. It's a form of hypnosis. And, that takes them back into childhood. Where did they learn about money? What, is there a block? And we start to reframe that, reprogram that, and dive in deeper into that mindset. And then they walk away with a tool to look at money differently through what they've discovered. If it's diving right into the numbers, I have them look at, their income for the last year. A lot of people they come to me saying, I need to stop spending. I know this. And I'm like, well, how much do you make? I don't know. Well, how much are you in the red? Well, I don't know. Well, how do you know you need to stop spending then? Let's look at how much you're spending. And so a lot of times I'll have people do kind of a 3-month, write out everything you're spending. Right. And that right there, I did this with a client last week, and that right there, I didn't really have to show her anything. She knew by the end of the session, oh, wow, a quarter of my money is going here. And I don't want that to go. And that's just lost money going out for shopping and stuff. And I need to shift that. And so that's kind of where we start, is either mindset or the numbers. And then we build from there.
Interesting. Do you also on your website talks about journal as well? Talk about that. What is that for?
Yeah. So, so often we sit and thoughts come into our minds around money. I don't have enough. How am I going to retire? I just want freedom, but I'm working this job, all the things. Right. And so I have people just journal it out. Oftentimes, if we are thinking about those things all week long, oh, did I pay that bill? How am I going to pay my credit card? I'm so far in debt. That brings us into a place of where we're not feeling confident, and you start to lose hope, right? And so I tell everyone, if you're really struggling with your mindset or you're not clear on your numbers, that's why you have the money date, is because those thoughts and fears, you say, I'll deal with that on my money date. Yeah. And that frees up energy to do other things during the day. And so when you get to that money date, you can journal about, well, how am I feeling about money? Is this a real thing? Let me look. Do I have enough to pay my bills this month? Yes. Am I doing good on my spending? Am I paying off my debt? Great. Then you know that everything is good versus letting your thoughts get away with you
Yeah.
and taking up your time.
Wow. That's amazing. It's funny because as you're talking, I just kind of thinking back to what I was like when I was younger. It takes a while. I mean, when you start from really a place of naivete about something, it takes a while to get to get on a roll. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of women who are very successful and have their acts together. Guys too, but because we're talking about women in particular in this conversation today. So it's definitely it's a huge huge part of life.
It is.
Yeah. So talk to me. What you also do like retreats. So talk to me about the last one that you did.
Well, the last one I did was actually in Paris. I took a group of women to, yeah, yeah. So I was doing them here in San Diego, and then I decided to do a week-long money flow retreat in Paris, because Paris gives us so much as a platform to look at wealth. The French are very into quality foods, quality clothes, not having as much. Historically, it's a city of thousands of years old, starting with the Romans. And so it's just, and I live there. So I love to show this beautiful place, to people. And so it was very successful. The women had a lot of great experiences, and it was, I did take them around the city. We ate great food, we drank great wine, but it was also these experiences that I took them through the process that they would do here. The journaling prompts, letting go of it. I'll tell you a beautiful story of, there's a park in front of the Louvre Museum. It's this huge park, and they have cafes, and I was there with my mom a couple years ago, and she, she has a different perspective on money than I do. And she, just kind of was giving me a warning, like, don't be too focused on money. And I was like, yeah, I'm not, I'm not. I'm helping people get out of debt and such, and doing amazing things with these women. And so, I could at that point choose to fall into a place of, oh, my mom just kind of told me I'm down the wrong path, or, whatever. Or as I was walking out of this park with her, I had this vision of, when I was little, she taught me how to sew. And I no longer do that. And I've kind of handed that back to her. And when I was little, she taught us to do crafts and hobbies. And I don't really do those things anymore. And I handed that back to her. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was like, do the same thing with money. You don't have to carry her money beliefs. You can just hand it back to her right now. And we were approaching these big gates, because they shut down the park and lock it at night. And, we were walking towards that gate, and I was like, I'm going to hand back my money beliefs, because they no longer serve me. I choose to hand it back to her, and she can do what she wants with that. And when I walk out this gate, it's done. And I did that with the ladies that I took to Paris. We went to the same cafe. I gave them some journaling prompts. We discussed them, what is it that you learned from your mom and dad that you want to take, and what do you want to give back to them? And so I was telling this story to them as we were walking towards a gate, and I chose a different gate this time. And so we get almost to the gate, and tears just start to flow, and these women are just processing, like, wow, I can actually just hand this guilt or shame or fear or lack of knowledge right back to my parents, and walk out and feel free. And so there was this little tiny gate, and the hinges were loud. And so they are like, I'm leaving it here in this park. I'm done with this. I'm not going to believe this anymore. And so they walk out this little gate, and the thing's like, bam. And they were like, wow, that felt so good to hear that gate just slam shut. I don't have to believe this anymore. Yeah. and they really stepped into being empowered and like, okay, I'm going to look at my numbers. I'm going to move forward with this. And it's an interesting thing in these retreats. There's a shift where they come into the retreat and they're a little bit intimidated and, oh, I have to do some work here, and
Right.
I don't really want to look at my numbers, and are you going to see my numbers, and is anybody else going to look at my money, and all these thoughts. And in San Diego, the retreat is 2 days, and by like 3/4 through the first day, the women are, when do we get to look at the numbers? When do I get to open my bank statement? When do I get to get on my computer? And because the transition and that healing has already begun. And the second, I'm like, wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the next day we sit down and we build strategies, and I show them, by looking at your numbers, you're uncovering things now, you're cleaning things up. But one thing I show them that's really, really powerful in the retreats is I show them, okay, if you take money and you pay off your car, let's say, and that payment is $500. And let's say you take that same $500 and you apply it to your mortgage. Well, guess what? I'll show you how many hundreds of thousands of dollars you're going to save by doing that one move. I did this for my husband and I a couple years ago. That's why I laid this process out for the women in the retreat. And I realized that by paying off our mini for $450 a month, then I just put that straight into our mortgage, like nothing has changed. It would save us $120,000. That's a lot of money with no difference to us. That didn't mean we had to cut money or spending. It didn't mean we had to make more income. It was just reallocating. And so I try to show women, like, okay, you have credit card debt right now. Guess what? You pay all that down. What are you going to do with that money next? How are you going to make more money? How does your money get to work for you?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And stuff like that. Somebody may go through life and never hear about those things. It's fascinating. I want to ask you, and hopefully we'll be able to do this, because we did a really cool interview several months ago about real estate investing. So I definitely want to try to figure out a way, if it's okay with you, to put it on to my channel as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Because that was actually a lot of fun. And what I'm referring to is Nikki was doing that particular day was talking about real estate investing and just kind of the basics of it. And again, that's another, well, I would say real estate investing, you're starting to get into you've already got your act together with your budget. Now you're ready to start doing some things. And then the way you teach them about the benefits of real estate, I think is amazing. And it's one of those things. It sounds intimidating as hell, but actually, once you get into it, it's pretty, anybody can do it.
I agree. And, I think one thing that you and I should talk about is the difference between investing in stocks and real estate, because a lot of people will say they like one or the other. And I've had this conversation over the last few weeks where this has come up a lot. And I'm like, I can pencil out the numbers for you. Like, this is how to pencil out the numbers to see if real estate or stocks will work. And I know we talked about that in that video. So
yeah, I've got friends, just as an aside here, I've got friends who that's all they do is trade. He runs his family office, and he's been an investor forever in stocks. And I tried it once, and it's just, you have to be on top of that all the time.
Yeah, you have to be very on top of it. And I think that, what I've experienced is people who do really well in stocks, they're very knowledgeable about it, and they're always in it, and they're always watching it. And for real estate, I feel like it's more of a novice's game. Is novices a word?
Yeah. And it's one of those things that you don't, and that's one of the beautiful things about real estate, is you don't have to watch it all the time.
Right,
As long as you
exactly.
got it set up, you can let it go for a little bit. And, and then there's obviously the difference between being a trader and an investor when it comes to equities and that sort of thing. So yeah, just a lot of stuff that, people, and I was very much in this regard growing up, not just because it wasn't sort of part of our experience. It wasn't until you become an adult where you start to really realize what's out there. So
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I think that there is one thing I've been encouraging people to do is if there's something on your heart that you kind of say, this keeps coming up, but I don't know how to do it, is just to explore those options or to listen to podcasts, to read a book about it. For me, I was very interested in real estate. I was very interested in life coaching in my early 20s. And I kept telling myself this story of, well, who are you going to be a life coach to? You haven't experienced life. Or how could you, do real estate? You don't know anything about it. But I had my mentors, and I did dive into real estate at an early age, and I did very well with it. But it's because I took the initiative to go out and say, okay, I can do this. And so I think that there's deep rooted things within us that we're curious about that we kind of tamper down. And so if anyone listening is feeling that they're tampering down ideas or thoughts or feelings around, something they want to explore when it comes to money or investing, there's so much at our fingertips. I really encourage people to go out and just start investigating it. Just read about it, explore it.
Yeah. And again, if you're interested in getting a hold of Nicole, it's Nicole/Lombardo.com, and it's Money Flow. Money Flow is Nicole's company. Mentors, definitely a huge thing. How did you? Who were they? How did you find them? Talk a little bit more about that.
It's funny. My mentors came into my life around, I got married at 19, just turned 20. And I met my current mentors through my ex-husband. And I started working in their mortgage business, I think at 19, 20, right around then. And I still work with them, and they still are in my life. And throughout the years, I realized, because I wasn't working with them in my 30s because the industry died off a little bit after 2008, is my relationship really was a mentorship with them. They taught me so much. They were open to sharing their wisdom and penciling out numbers with me, and the things that they shared, I was like, wow, this is such an opportunity. I need to listen. And it's interesting because after 20 plus years of having that relationship, just recently I started thinking, I would really like a mentor in this area. And so I just kind of waited, and I was like, I'm going to see who kind of comes into my life. And someone amazing did come into my life. And it was interesting because I was having dinner with him, and we were talking about the money flow, and he just turned to me and he was like, I am a mentor. I love to mentor. I don't charge. And please call me anytime.
Wow.
And it was just like such an answer to what I was putting out,
Yeah.
like I would love to have, someone in this capacity. So, I really look at relationships like that is so cherished. And the first mentorship came into my life. It was just like they came into my life. And now looking back, I realized that I was meant to be in mortgages and real estate and finance and money and all of those things. And it's interesting because when I put together the Money Flow Co., I made a planner that I sell on Amazon. And in the planner, all these exercises and the way I track money, and something that I didn't even connect with mentally was that one of the trackers was how I used to track stocks back when I was like 19. We didn't have apps. We didn't have iPhones back then. I would take a piece of paper and I would take a ruler and write lines out, and I'd put my stocks and I'd track it every week and, whatever. I still have the paper. somewhere.
Yeah.
And years ago, when my grandfather died, my grandmother said, go into his office, take a look at, everything, if there's any books or anything that you want. And I went in, and it was so crazy, Brian. My grandfather had 30 plus years of tracking stocks the exact same way. He had these big desk calendars that he would draw out exactly like I was, and tracking it before I was born.
And you didn't know
And
that. You didn't know that when you started doing yours. Wow.
No. And he had books by Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, mindset books, money chart books, like all these books. And I was like sitting in this office going, these are the exact same books on my bookshelf. This is the exact same way I track my money. And so I brought some of that stuff home, and I showed it to my husband, and he was blown away. He actually took one of the pieces that was from my birth year and framed it. And
Wow.
and then when I put together this planner, I realized, that's funny. That's exactly. So it came down through like a generational thing. Even though my grandfather would never talk to me about, I used to beg him to talk to me about stocks, and he was like, no. He just told me straight up, no, you have to have a lot of money to get into that. And I'm like,
Really?
yeah, he just shut it down. And that was my mom's dad. Like, so they just, have a hard time talking about money. But I picked up hereditary, I don't know, something from him. And
yeah, that's actually amazing that it goes down through generations, how they, even though he was doing it, and I would assume probably at some level successful at it, he still didn't want to share that for whatever reason. That is wild.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know why he didn't want to share it. But it wasn't a shutdown. It was just like, no, it's like too much, and maybe he just was tired that day, and it was just too much for him to even talk about. I don't know, but he was successful at it. He was successful. He had such good strategies with real estate, and oh well.
That just reminded me when I was growing up. And again, this is one of those things where, looking back now, if I had kind of any type of wherewithal or interest in it, she would have been a perfect mentor, or at least a sounding board to kind of fill me in. This was my great aunt, basically my grandmother on my mother's side, and she died in 1990 at 90. And so she basically saw the world from 1900 to 1990. And she was one of the few, if not the only one, women in, I believe it was the industry or the insurance industry. And I remember seeing a picture that she used to have in her house of this kind of panoramic shot of a big formal event. Everyone's in tuxedos, all the guys. And there's my Aunt Kay in her dress right there. Like, she was such a forerunner. I mean, she was so far beyond what women were doing back then, and she also did a lot of investing. And it would have been, if I just had the wherewithal to ask her about that, it would have been, I'm sure she had some stories. I'm sure she would have. Well, I don't know if she would have liked to have talked about it or not, but it just never occurred to me to ask. So that's actually a great. What you're saying there is find a mentor, find somebody, and if anybody's out there that's kind of young and they think that they might be an annoyance to somebody, I guarantee you 99% of the people who are asked to help out in some form or fashion would be more than happy to. So especially young people out there just getting started, do not feel afraid to go ask somebody about what they do. And again, this is, what's the name of that book on Amazon? And can anybody go on and buy it?
Yeah, anybody can buy it. It's called, there's one called The Money Flow, and one is called The Money Date Planner. And they're both, if you look up my name, Nicole Lombardo, with the Money Date Planner, they'll pop up. The Money Date Planner is all finance, like the first 17 pages is deep dive right into everything, that you would want to ask yourself about your finances. Yeah. And then it has areas in it for a weekly money date. So you can journal, you can go through your numbers and just keep track of everything. So it's in 90-day stints.
Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, do you your clients, when they come to you, are there any issues or stressors? Because this could be a huge marriage stressor. You know, if one spouse has a really good understanding of money and all those sorts of things, and the other one doesn't, obviously that's a huge divide, right? Do you see that a lot? And what are some things that you try to tell your clients how they might be able to remedy that?
I absolutely see it a lot, and
Really?
it's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And I've been asked to speak on it and
Right.
maybe even teach a retreat for couples type of thing, where they can both, work on it together. The first thing is that after all these years of looking at finances and doing budgets and doing mortgages and helping women build businesses, I still went back and I just wanted a financial coach certification, right? And so I just Googled it. I ended up in Nashville at Dave Ramsey's coaching program. And I just signed up for it. I didn't really think about who was leading it and all that. And one of his things is you don't talk to one person and not the other. If their finances need to be together, they need to come together in one unit. And but in my work, it's about a personal journey and healing your relationship with money, and then diving into the numbers. And so, for me, I really start with that one person in front of me. And then when they ask about, well, how do I get my husband on board with this, or my boyfriend, I always say, you need to do your work. And when they see things shifting in your life, let them start asking the questions. Yeah. You don't want to try to force it onto someone, but clean up what you have going on, heal your relationship with money, and then you can start to ask questions or begin to show them, what you're excited about, that you paid off something, or, most people that I talk to have kind of like a separate and together finances, so they can clean up their part, and then the next move is to, hey, can we talk about our joint finances? And so at that point, I've had a few people just say, can we just meet with you now together? So then we can do that.
Have you done that? And
yeah.
How's that gone? Does the sibling, or excuse me, does the spouse who it doesn't necessarily have the same level or the same desire to understand money, are they defensive? I mean, how's that? What's that whole vibe like?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, again, by the time they get to me, they're open to most things, because it takes a lot, I think, to come to someone and say, okay, here's everything laid out before you. And and they know my philosophies because their partner has told them, so it's usually a good experience, and they can kind of have that third party to say, hey, you guys are doing a good job. Here's somewhere where you could expand, or, for me, I really tie things into, like, why are we trying to pay off debt? Why are we trying to save? If there's a long-term goal attached to that, or a vision behind it, then you're more apt to do it. And so if I can get both of them to really start saying, like, what are we dreaming up here together? What do we want to do together? Then they're on the same page with their finances and can really move together strongly. So it does work if, as long as they're communicating and on the same page.
Right. Do you have clients that are outside of California, or is it primarily local clients?
Oh, all over the world.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's Nicole-Lombardo.com, Money Flow Co. You mentioned something a couple minutes ago. You received your financial coaching through Dave Ramsey. One of my siblings is a huge fan of him and has read all of his books and literally has gotten her financial house in order to the point where they're doing great right now. And so every time I see her, she's constantly telling me about Dave Ramsey. Yeah.
You know, it's great because he gives like the protocol and it is strict and some people really need that. And when I walked away from that program, I am, after being a business coach and a life coach and stuff like that, I really brought the coaching side of it. That's where the mindset tools came in. It's like, okay, I can tell you, eat beans and rice and pay off your debt, but a lot of people won't do it unless they heal their relationship with money and take a look at what's going on mentally, internally with their thoughts. So I think what he does is amazing. He has helped so many people. It's really incredible.
No, and she feels the same way. Yeah, it's interesting. He's gotta, I guess you just gotta want, as with anything, you gotta want to make that change, right? So
Exactly. So that's exactly why I have people tie it to a reason. If they, what is it like to feel that you don't have the credit card debt? What does it feel like to save for a trip and pay cash? What does it feel like to dream about the house you want to buy, right? Because then you'll make those choices. Then you'll make the choice to not spend that day or to stop, just swiping the credit card or to really get active and paying off the debt and doing the work, If we tie it to something really fabulous on the other end, we're more likely to do it.
yeah, nice. Now, do you have any upcoming, with all the COVID craziness, do you have any upcoming seminars or trips with money flow coming up, or when's the next one? When's the next one to Paris, or are you going to go Italy next, Rome?
That is to be determined.
Yeah.
We will see when the world opens up, when travel opens up. In-person events are, just on hold right now. I'm running everything through my Facebook group. It's called the Money Flow. Okay. And it is, we have a Money Flow book club, and we have discussion around money and finance and mindset books. We have, I'm going to start challenges every month. So, a lot of people are nervous to just step into something. So I'll show them a new tool and we'll create a challenge around it and come together as a community to do it. And that way they can start to use fun apps like Robinhood app or the Cash app and, just like, or getting into QuickBooks and understanding it. And so, yeah, that's it. Right now, I'm just really working inside the Facebook group, just building that community and connecting people to one another, feeling like they have a place to go. And then if they need my help as a mentor, then we have just one-on-one sessions over Zoom right now.
Gotcha. Very cool. Hey, just actually kind of for my own edification, that little video that you and I did you get anybody have any good positive results from that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny because I think you asked me at a dinner right after that, like, oh, did anybody watch? And I was like, yeah. And I said, the group at that time was only like, I think 100 people or something. And I think at that point, maybe 40 people had watched. But what had happened from that is one person was in the midst of buying a house after that. Like the people who said, oh, I watched your video and this is where I'm at. I had 2 people refinance. I had and pay off debt and get themselves in a better financial position. Somebody else bought a house. Another woman started looking at investment properties. We actually went out to Palm Springs together to look at real estate back in January. And so, it's like, if someone can do a video and have, you had asked me, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks later, to have so many people make real estate's a big thing, to jump into refinancing and looking at investments and all of those things, that I thought, wow, that was a good video. It was a powerful shift for people. Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to figure out a way to somehow link it to my Instagram and to my YouTube channel as well. Very cool. Nice. I love it. Well, so this has been a great conversation. And again, it's Nicole-Lombardo.com, the Money Flow Co. If you're interested, definitely check her out. Check her out on that her Facebook group as well. a lot of good stuff there. And like I said, I'll definitely try to get that link to that video, because I had a good time doing that with you as well. So I've kind of one more question for you, and then we can kind of see where this takes us. But where do you, like right now, you don't have to tell me exactly, but do you have 100 clients, you have 50 clients, and where do you want it to, and where do you see the money flow going over the next 5 years or so? What's your vision for it?
My vision really is to empower people to feel comfortable with money and to implement what they learn from the Money Flow Co. and the community and other people, and then go out and share it with other people. That's how we can make the conversation around money feel more comfortable, to educate ourselves, to help other people.
Yeah.
It's mentorship kind of spread out and really going viral. And that is the most important thing for me. It's not about me. It's not about the way I do it. It's not my content. It's just, if something I share helps you, then implement it, tweak it to how you like to do it, and then share the process with somebody else. And it's really cool because I know this is already working and happening. I'm seeing this vision roll out, because when I work with a client, or if they're in the group and it's just in the community, people are adding people to the Facebook group, and they're sharing, this is how it's changed my life, or they're sharing the processes that they're now working through, and they're talking to their family about it, and they're helping their siblings heal from their childhood stuff that they all experienced together. And so it has been just such a blessing to see that happening. And I think that, especially as women, we again go out and we can teach our sisters, we can teach our daughters, we can teach our kids, we can, talk to our friends, and that doesn't mean we have to say, okay, this is how much I owe and this is how much I make, but it's just having that beautiful conversation around, I'm really excited to pay off my debt. I'm really excited to, eventually buy a home, stuff like that. And so that's the vision that I would like to see for the Money Flow Co. is that everybody, is feeling better about their relationship with money, feeling better about having their debts paid off and all of that, but also just going out and sharing and building, their own communities. It's really cool because I have so many entrepreneurs that I've worked with. I, did business coaching and then the money coaching, and now they are implementing into their programs full money mindset masterclasses, and I come in as a guest and teach. And so it is multiplying. And so that is like the biggest thing for me.
Nice. So how many of these talks or these speaking engagements are you involved in right now?
I'd say I do a couple a month,
Really?
It's yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I do kind of a couple master classes a month, I'd say. And, or I'm a guest speaker somewhere, or, right now it's kind of weird too, but I don't do a lot of in-person stuff, but I actually don't do a lot of in-person stuff just because I do, I'm remote a lot of the time. I'm traveling a lot. And so, yeah, but so lucky to be invited, blessed to be invited to continue sharing.
Yeah. And are you like, when you go travel, when you go on vacation or whatever, are you still just constantly putting content out on your Facebook page, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're plugged in the whole time.
Yeah, plugged in the whole time. Yeah. I might take off a few days, or, skip a video here or there in the Facebook group. But, I like to, like last summer I was traveling a ton. And so what I did, I was looking at real estate in a couple different places, and, just cause I'm curious. And so like I was in Cabo, and so I picked up a guide for, local real estate. And so I did a video around that. And I was just sharing, if you were to invest, what would it look like? Here's how to even, to look at an international investment. And then right after that, I was in Florida and I went to an open house. I met with a realtor. I was looking at some real estate there and I told them why I was looking in that area. And I broke down the numbers, and like one house had a lot of flooding. And I was like, if I were to look at this house, this is what I would do next. And so it actually gives me a lot of content to be out on the road, because I'm living out this is not something that I learned and I'm regurgitating and just like handing off to people. This is an experience that I'm living out daily. And so I'm just sharing from my perspective what I'm working through.
Nice. I love it. Well, I tell you what, this was a very enjoyable conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
It's my pleasure, Nikki. And again, everybody, that's Nicole-Lombardo.com, Money Flow Co. Also check out her Facebook page. Sounds like she's got some great things out there, and you're doing some great stuff, because this is hugely important. It's the one thing besides your clothes that you probably touch every single day, money. So listen, well, let's close it out by like I always do on my podcasts. If you're in the military, the police, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Please stay safe. And that's it for right now. Nikki, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, guys, this is the Rain Man. Take care. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live In. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.